All right, so let's dive into something kind of heavy today, but honestly, like super important.
Yeah.
Divorce agreements. And look, I know it's
Okay.
not like the most fun thing to talk about,
Sure.
but whether you're, maybe going through it yourself or you know someone who is, understanding like the legal side of things can be, I think, really empowering.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that's kind of what we're here to do today.
Yep.
This deep dive is all about like giving you just the essential knowledge you need to navigate this whole world, right? It's complex, it's messy.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be talking about a podcast episode called Understanding Divorce Agreements and Their Components.
Okay.
Which is just like a really, really practical overview.
Perfect.
And, if you're the kind of person who likes like clear, actionable information,
Yeah.
this is the episode for you.
Love it.
So think of this as like your legal toolkit, right? Helping you understand what matters
Yeah.
when it comes to divorce agreement. So, okay, I've heard this phrase divorce agreement like thrown around.
Right.
But what is it? Like, what's the big deal?
So a divorce agreement, and this is what's fascinating, is essentially a contract.
Okay.
It's a legally binding contract. And it outlines like all the terms of your separation.
Right.
So think of it almost as a roadmap, for navigating this like brand new life that you're stepping into.
Okay.
And it lays out the ground rules for everything.
Okay, so roadmap, I get that.
Yeah.
But like, what kind of ground rules are we talking? It's not just like who gets the couch.
It's way beyond the couch.
Okay.
It covers everything from how you're going to be dividing property and assets,
right?
How you're going to handle child custody and support,
okay,
even spousal support, alimony,
right?
And the source really emphasizes how important clarity is in these agreements. Like if you have vague language, that's where you're setting yourself up for misunderstandings,
right?
For conflict later on down the line.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like,
yeah.
If the roadmap's unclear, you're going to get lost.
Exactly.
So a well-drafted agreement, it sounds like, can really help you avoid those like legal battles and just emotional turmoil in the future.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
You really want to prevent those like, well, I thought we agreed on this.
Yeah.
Moments later on.
Totally.
Yeah.
So let's break down like some of these ground rules.
Okay. Yeah.
Starting with property and assets.
All right.
Which seems like pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You split everything 50-50, right?
Not always.
Okay.
The source explains that there are actually two main legal approaches.
Oh?
One is called community property.
Okay.
And the other is called equitable distribution.
Gotcha.
So community property, which is used in some states,
right,
means that all the assets that were acquired during the marriage are going to be split 50-50.
Okay.
Now, equitable distribution, which is a little bit more common, that aims for what's considered like fair, even if it's not exactly equal.
So how does a court decide what fair is?
That's where things get interesting.
Right.
The courts, they look at all these different factors. They look at each person's contributions to the marriage.
Okay.
What their earning potential is.
Gotcha.
Even sacrifices that, one spouse might have made.
Right.
So, for example, if, let's say, one person put their career on hold to raise children, that's a significant contribution to the marriage.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't financially based.
Right. So it's not just about splitting everything down the middle.
Exactly. It's much more nuanced.
Okay, cool.
And that, and it's important to understand which approach your specific state follows, because that can have a huge impact on how everything gets divided.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that are complex, let's talk about child custody and support.
Oh, yes.
Which is like a whole other...
Those are their ball game.
Can of worms.
Can of worms, yeah.
For sure. So the source says, like, the child's best interests are always the priority.
Absolutely.
But how do courts actually determine what's best?
Well, they look at a bunch of different factors.
Okay.
Like the age of the child, their relationship with each parent.
Right.
And really importantly, each parent's ability to provide a stable and nurturing environment.
Okay, so in terms of custody then, like what are the different arrangements that are out there?
So you have joint custody, where both parents share in the decision-making and the physical custody of the child.
Gotcha.
And then you have sole custody, where one parent has primary physical custody of the child, and they're making like the majority of the decisions.
So if one parent has sole custody, does that mean the other parent has like no say at all?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Even in those situations, the non-custodial parent typically has visitation rights.
Right.
And they might still be able to, weigh in on some of those like major decisions about the child.
Gotcha. And then I imagine like child support payments come into play here.
Absolutely. Child support is determined by looking at a bunch of factors, like the income of both parents and the child's needs. And those calculations can get pretty complex, especially when you start to think about healthcare costs, educational expenses, extracurricular activities.
There's a lot.
Yeah, it's not as easy as just like writing a number down on a piece of paper. There are a lot of factors that go into it. But the source also stresses that these calculations, they can always be modified if circumstances change.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's move on to another aspect that the source mentioned, which is spousal support.
Okay.
Which some people might know as like alimony.
Alimony.
So what's the deal with that?
So alimony is basically financial support. That is paid by one spouse to the other after the divorce. Now, this isn't automatic, and it really depends on a lot of different things. Like the length of the marriage, the income disparity between the spouses, and the earning capacity of each person.
So it's not just about like who's making more money at the time of the divorce.
Exactly.
It's also about their potential to earn in the future.
Exactly. The court wants to make sure that both parties have like a fair chance to become financially independent after the divorce.
That makes sense. It sounds like there's a lot to consider.
There is.
The course also mentioned something about health insurance and retirement accounts.
Yes, those are often overlooked.
Oh, really?
But they are super important aspects to consider because if you've been covered under your spouse's health insurance, you're going to have to figure out your own coverage after the divorce. And retirement accounts, those are considered marital assets. So they're going to be subject to division as well.
Wow. I never really thought about those details.
Yeah.
So what's the bottom line here? Like, what's the one thing our listeners should take away from all of this?
I think the source gives really good advice.
Okay.
Seek legal help.
Okay.
While there are, DIY options out there, having an expert in your corner can make a world of difference. They can help you understand your rights. They can help you negotiate favorable terms. And they can make sure that the agreement is legally sound. And that it's going to protect your interests.
Yeah, it sounds like trying to do this alone is like trying to perform surgery on yourself.
Yeah, not recommended.
Not recommended. So just to recap. Divorce agreements. They're these like detailed contracts. That cover everything from property division to child custody and support.
That's right.
And spousal support.
Absolutely.
Clarity is key.
Important.
To avoid those conflicts down the line, and seeking legal expertise is like a must.
It's a must. And, we focused a lot on the legal side of things, but it's so important to remember that divorce is a huge emotional process as well.
Oh, for sure.
So don't hesitate to reach out for support, whether it's therapists, counselors, support groups. This deep dive gave you the legal foundation, but navigating those emotional complexities, that's just as important.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
If this podcast helped you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep making these videos. Thanks for watching.